starting, please? The next session is starting. The next session is starting, so if you please, yeah. The next session is starting, please. Yeah. Excuse me. The next session is starting. If you would like the car. Yeah. The next session is starting. Yeah, if you like. The next session is starting. Yeah. Yeah, please. Excuse me. The next session is starting. If you like, you can keep the discussion in the dinner or at the dinner. Yeah. The next session is starting. Yeah. The next session is starting. Hello. The next session is starting, please. Yeah. Arena guys, please. The next session is starting.
I need to wait with this for Kareem to return.
I don't care about Kareem. Just wanted to.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us for this last session of the day. My name is Felicia Jackson, and I'm going to be your moderator this afternoon. You may have noticed that there is no title after my name on the programme, and that's partly because I do a lot of different things. I'm a writer, I'm a teacher, I'm an entrepreneur, and the thing that brings it all together is a fascination with the energy transition. So a few housekeeping notes. I'm just going to run you through how we're going to run the session today. We're going to start off with a couple of speakers who are going to give us a research organisation perspective and a government view on innovation and how you can actually push that forward. We'll have two speakers up on the panel. We'll have both of their presentations, about 10 minutes each, and then we'll have a question and answer session. Following that, I'm going to call up the rapporteurs. Now, one of the challenges at an event like this is it's almost impossible to attend everything you want to attend. So we're lucky enough to have got three experts who've been following the different tracks, and they're going to give 10-minute presentations on their views, their thoughts, their insights, the things that captured their imaginations about the sessions so far. What we'd love to do, we're going to have obviously a Q&A, and we're hoping that you will be putting your questions through the Attendify app. But what we also want to do is hear from you. We want to know what really stood out to you, what you found interesting, what you found challenging. So we're actually going to have microphones in the audience and hope that you'll actually make this a general discussion about the things that we need to learn. Finally, I'm going to call up a couple of speakers who are going to talk to us about how things are actually playing out on the ground. One of the things we know is that everybody now accepts we need an environmentally friendly, economic and reasonable source of energy. Well, we know that, but the question is, how do we get there? How do we do it fast enough? How's it going to work? The point of this sort of event is to bring together as many people as possible who can share the knowledge that they have so that we can actually accelerate the transition to a renewable-powered future. There are delegates from over 80 countries that have been registered, and I'm really hoping we're going to have some fabulous insights in the session this afternoon. What we really need to think about is the power sector. We know that the power sector has been the most affected by the energy transition, and the shift to electrification is only making that worse. We know that we're going to massively have to increase the amount of electrification if we're going to achieve the Paris outcomes, and that's in the same time frame. That's a shift from 20 to 50% at a minimum. But there's a possibility for 60% of that to come from renewables. There are so many innovative solutions out there. We know that there are things on the ground, there are things in development. What we really don't know is how and when those changes are going to take place. And hopefully, some of the information we come up with today will help guide us towards where that should be. I'm going to ask our first speakers to come up to the panel and join me. First of all, I would like to invite Simon Perrault, who is the Deputy Director General of CEA LITEN. And he's going to be giving us the perspective from a research organisation, looking at solutions that are increasing system flexibility and their impact. Our second speaker, who I'd also like to join us on the stage, is Philippe Dauphin, Director General of the CanMet Materials Laboratory from National Resources Canada. He's going to be giving us a government perspective on how we actually accelerate that support. Thank you. Simon, would you like to kick off?
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for the invitation. So today I will give you a short overview of what we are doing in CEA LITEN and what are the innovations in clean energy technologies that we are developing together with our industrial partners. So first, a very brief introduction about CEA LITEN. LITEN is a technological research institute based in France, in Grenoble and Chambéry, in the French Alps. We are about 1,000 researchers developing innovative technologies for the energy transition. And our research interests include renewable energy generation, mainly solar photovoltaics, energy storage, but also electromobility, energy efficiency and system integration, as well as sustainable and smart materials. We strongly believe that we need to follow a holistic approach in research and innovation, and in particular in the field of clean energy and clean mobility technologies. And a nice recent example of this is the project that we developed together with the Energy Observer team. So Energy Observer is a clean boat powered only by renewable energy and hydrogen. And in Litten, we have developed the full energy system for this boat. So integrating solar photovoltaic modules, water electrolyzer for the production of hydrogen from the seawater, but also the hydrogen storage, the batteries, and the energy management system. And so far, this boat has traveled close to 10,000 miles all around the world. If we speak about holistic approach and system integration, a very important aspect is modeling and simulation. In Litten, we are developing different specific software tools for modeling complex energy systems. And modeling is extremely useful in order to size the system, but also to select the most appropriate technologies, renewable technologies for energy generation or energy storage, and also to optimize the energy management algorithm. Here are just two examples. So we have developed a software platform called Odyssey for the modeling of a multi-carrier energy system where you can combine different energy vectors such as electricity, heat, gas, and hydrogen. And we have also developed another software platform called Pegas, which is devoted to heating and cooling networks. And we are currently using this software platform to optimize the heating district network in the city of Grenoble in France. Here I move to what we are doing in the field of photovoltaics, which is one of the main axes in our research institute. In the last 10 years, we have been developing a very high efficiency crystalline silicon solar cell technology called the heterojunction technology. And we have built a pilot line in Chambéry in our institute in order to manufacture these crystalline silicon solar cells. And today we are transferring the technology to Enel Green Power, which is building a manufacturing line in Catania in the south of Italy. And with this heterojunction technology, we can reach very high efficiency, today up to 24% with cells manufactured using industrial processes in our pilot line. This has to be compared to the conventional silicon solar cell technology, which today has an efficiency around 20% or below. And we are also working on the next generation solar cells, which will probably be tandem solar cells with a silicon bottom cell and a perovskite top cell to reach efficiencies higher than 30% ultimately. In photovoltaics, we are also working quite a lot on system integration, and one of our goal is to functionalize large surfaces which today are not utilized and which in the future could produce solar power. So for example, we are working on building integrated photovoltaics with our industrial partners Vicat and Aremont in France to develop prefabricated panels for building renovation. And this kind of panels combine both photovoltaic modules and the thermal insulation. We are also working with the company Colas on the so-called road integrated photovoltaics. So this is a solar photovoltaic road where solar photovoltaic modules are integrated within the road surface in order to supply energy which can be used locally, for example, for street lights, traffic lights, or maybe in the future electric vehicle charging station. And in the same spirit, we are working with a company CNR to develop photovoltaic power plants which can be integrated along the Rhône River banks in order also to supply energy which could be used locally, for example, to power electric boats traveling on the river. Here is one slide on batteries. We have a lot of activities on batteries for transport, starting from materials up to system integration. Concerning materials, recently we have developed a new battery electrolyte together with Solvay. This is a gel polymer electrolyte, and this is, we believe, a first step towards all solid-state batteries which can offer increased reliability, lifetime, and also safety. And together with Airbus, we have a very nice collaboration, ongoing collaboration, where we developed with Airbus battery packs and battery systems for fully electric aircrafts. So we have developed the battery pack with Airbus for the EFAN electric airplane. And today we are working with Airbus on the Vahana prototype, which is an aircraft, a passenger aircraft for urban mobility. This is my last slide, and this is about energy storage, not with batteries, but with hydrogen. So energy storage for massive amounts of renewable energy. We have been developing the last 10 years a technology for producing hydrogen, which is based on water electrolysis. So the principle is to use green electricity and water to produce hydrogen. And this electrolysis technology is based on solid oxide high temperature technology, which offers the advantage of a very high efficiency. So we can today go very close to 90% efficiency, overall efficiency for converting electricity into or energy into hydrogen. And if we use waste heat, for example, from energy-intensive industry, this efficiency can go up to close to 100%. Another very important advantage of this technology is that it's reversible, meaning that the water electrolyzer can also operate as a fuel cell to produce hydrogen. And this is quite useful in some applications such as renewable energy storage in smart buildings and smart districts. And this is a business model of our startup company Sylphen, which was launched a few years ago. So, in conclusion, I have shown you some examples of innovative solutions developed at the interface between research and industry, and I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Simon. Philippe, could I ask you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to IRENA for inviting me to speak, as Canada is accessing IRENA as a new member. This afternoon, what I'll do is speak about the role of government and use the Government of Canada as an example. I'll speak about the clean tech sector in Canada and the role of the Canadian government in supporting it. So Canada is committed to its clean growth agenda, where the need to balance economic growth and environmental performance go hand in hand. In a historical show of collaboration, Canada's federal, provincial, and territorial governments have signed the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change in December 2016. This framework serves as a basis for action to meet Canada's 2030 emission targets by transitioning Canada to a low-carbon economy, including a national price on carbon in place by 2019, incenting clean energy innovation and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Developing new technologies is critical for Canada to transition to a cleaner economy. Canada is an active participant in the global clean technology sector with about 850 clean technology firms. In 2015, these firms generated $13 billion in revenue and supported 55,000 jobs. Canada has proven its competitive advantage, positioning our country as an attractive destination to invest in clean technology. For instance, with just about 2% of global population, we generate about 11% of environmental patents globally. We rank 4th on the Global Clean Tech Innovation Index, and we have 13 firms on the Global Clean Tech 100, the second highest of any country. We believe that the public sector has a critical role to play in addressing gaps in private sector capital to drive investment and innovation. The federal government has developed a comprehensive approach to supporting clean technology and attracting investment. This includes technology push as well as market pull measures to move emerging clean technologies from lab to market, including significant investments in the development and adoption of clean technologies through the early stage research, development, and demonstration. The Government of Canada has made investments of over $2.3 billion to further clean technology innovation, such as the Impact Canada Fund, which provides $75 million over 4 years to launch 5 breakthrough clean tech challenges, including the recently launched Women in Clean Tech Challenge and the Sky's the Limit Challenge on biojet fuel innovation. $200 million for clean technology R&D, demonstration, and adoption across the natural resources sectors, over $1 billion in financing for promising clean tech companies, ongoing funding for clean energy research, development, and demonstration in federal laboratories, and the creation of a clean growth hub to help companies and researchers with clean technology projects better navigate the federal innovation landscape. To accelerate clean energy R&D, Natural Resources Canada is investing $200 million through its Emerging Renewable Energy Program with a focus on offshore wind, geothermal, tidal, and concentrated photovoltaic projects. The aim of the program is to deploy emerging renewable energy technologies at scale, helping to create industries in Canada, while ensuring emerging renewables play a larger role in Canada's electricity supply mix. The Government of Canada's support has already achieved significant results, including several demonstration projects that have stimulated clean energy innovation in Canada. 2 examples. The first is the Drake Landing Solar Community in Okotoks, Alberta, which gets about 93% of the insolation of Miami, even though it's up in Canada, has a seasonal solar storage heating system at the community scale. The project integrates energy-efficient housing, solar energy district heating, and energy storage to fulfill almost 100% of the space heating requirements, a world first. The second project is Glencore, which is a mining company, at the Raglan mine in northern Quebec. They have a renewable electricity smart grid pilot project, which addresses some of the challenges facing renewable energy development in Canada's north. It combines an Arctic-rated turbine generator with a flywheel and a microgrid controller, and it's been able to replace 50% of the diesel-generated electricity on the site. So far, in 18 months, it's achieved about 14,000 tons of CO2 displacement. In Canada's view, the best way to accelerate clean energy innovation and have more projects like these succeed is to ensure policy and financial support can work together while collaboration is encouraged between the public, private, and academic sectors. The Government of Canada chose to make strategic investments in clean technology after several months of consultation with key partners across the innovation spectrum, such as industry, academia, civil society, and indigenous groups, who identified the need to de-risk clean technologies along the innovation spectrum. De-risking clean technologies is a concern shared by many countries, which is why Canada is committed to taking action at home and abroad. The transition to a low-carbon economy is a challenge that all countries share, and Canada is committed to working with partners around the world to develop and support clean technology and innovation that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, particularly in the energy sector. We believe that by working with international partners, we can leverage greater resources and expertise to accelerate the research, development, and deployment of clean technologies. One such example includes Canada's active participation in Mission Innovation, a global initiative aimed at accelerating clean energy innovation. Through Mission Innovation, members are seeking to double their investments in clean energy innovation over a 5-year period and are working to reduce the cost of clean energy technologies. We're an enthusiastic partner in this important initiative, and we're committed to the overall success of Mission Innovation. This year, Canada is fortunate to have the opportunity to welcome leaders and ministers from all over the globe to discuss clean energy transition and the crucial role of energy innovation. As part of Canada's G7 presidency, Canada is looking forward to hosting the G7 Energy and Environmental Ministers at the Ministerial on working together on climate change, oceans, and clean energy from September 19th to the 21st in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Following that, Canada is enthusiastic about the opportunity to host the Mission Innovation and Clean Energy Ministerial meetings on May 26th to 29th, 2019 in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all a pleasant evening.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Now, it seems at the moment as if we don't have any questions that have come through the app, so if you do have any questions, please do post them. But I have a couple. Simon, you mentioned this software development that you're doing, which is managing all the different vectors of power, and talking about the fact that you're working within a district to do it, working on heating networks. I'm just wondering what sort of role you think that could play within the smart cities networks and this idea of, in a sense, devolving to the district level in order to increase efficiencies.
Yes. Actually, this software can be used also to work on smart district. This Pegasus software developed for district heating. We can also use another software that I have talked about, which is Odyssey, which is devoted to this multi-carrier energy system. And actually what I have not presented, but we are also developing a third one, which is called Spider, it's another name, but devoted to more the electricity sector. So right now what we are trying to do is to integrate these three softwares into one unique platform in order to be able to tackle more complex systems, such as, for example, smart cities or smart districts. So this is something which is ongoing to integrate our three homemade softwares into one unique software platform.
And just to follow up on that, how long do you think it'll take before that becomes quite a usual thing to do?
You mean this modeling approach?
I mean, in looking at city districts, and actually once you've provided the modeling, it's the first step towards being able to do the actual work. But how long do you think it'll take before it gets to be in the real world?
I think it's already ongoing. There are demonstration projects, especially in Europe, working on this concept of smart cities, integrating different energy sources. So I think it's already happening, at least at the demonstration scale. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And Philippe, I had a question for you. Now, one of the things that makes Canada different is that you have the federation and you have the provinces. How do you, as a government body, manage innovation and the promotion of innovation when you've got so many different levers and levels at which decisions can be made?
Yeah, it can be a headache, but signing the pan-Canadian framework between the federal government, provincial governments, and the three territorial governments was a first, and it brought us all together around this commitment to lower our emissions and to meet our Paris targets.
Fantastic. I'm going to assume, from the lack of further questions, that it's time to move on to our rapporteurs. So thank you very much indeed for your contributions this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Simon and Philippe, much appreciated. Could I ask Konstantin, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Konstantin Stakos, who's the Chief Innovation Officer for ENTSO-E, which, as many of you, I'm sure, know, is the European Network System Operators for Electricity. He's actually been following the Digitalisation and Decentralisation track, so I'm very much looking forward to hearing what's going on there. Could I also ask to join us on stage Ruud Kempner, who's joining us from the Renewables and CCS Policy Unit at the European Commission. He's going to be reporting on electrification. And then could we also welcome Princess Abze Djima? Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong as well. She's the special envoy of the President of Burkina Faso, and she's been following the Markets and Citizens track. The Princess has actually got a very interesting role as well, because she's the leader of the Mama Light for Sustainable Energy programme, which I think is fascinating given that it uses sustainable energy, clean energy, as a means for empowering women and youth, small business, and it's actually sort of taking action on the ground. As I mentioned, each of our rapporteurs will be speaking for 10 minutes, just on their view of the track that they've followed. And then we'll have a discussion at the end of it. So, Ruud, if I could ask you? Sorry, no, I apologize. Konstantin, if you could start, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you, Felicia. It's been a privilege to listen to these discussions, and summarizing them, 5 of them, of course, was not exactly easy. And I want to use the opportunity to thank IRENA, Sean, and Francisco for putting together an excellent draft summary that I really only just fiddled a little bit with. And I also want to encourage the participants in those 5 sessions that I tried to summarize to actively use this wonderful app to ask questions, but also complement with things that I may not have emphasized enough or even left out entirely. So the slides, I think a bit by necessity, won't have too many fancy graphics and pictures. We're trying to capture key thoughts here. And since each of these sessions lasted a while, of course, we're trying to capture quite a few of key thoughts. So some of the thoughts are pretty worded in a pretty short way. Now, when it comes to innovation, the topic of us all being here, innovation putting new things to work in business models, making money with them, but most importantly, putting them to actual work for the benefit of the people in the world. Digitalization and decentralization are key parts of innovation. I think that's clear to all of us as we live in a rather digital age. And as those two complementing each other are also, in my perception, very much in line with global megatrends. They're megatrends in themselves in a way, but they're also in line with individualization of us all becoming our own little brand on Facebook or wherever, of us being particular in some way. Without digitalization, that would hardly be possible, and decentralization is very close to these subjects. Digitalization is also an absolute key enabler for the power sector transformation. Managing data, optimizing systems, unlocking flexibility, all are needed to integrate more renewable energy, especially wind and solar, as they fluctuate, and as we go towards decarbonized energy. In the beginning presentations, there was mention of billions of connected devices, of a data explosion leading to better decision support and ultimately leading to automated control, making things better, integrating more renewables, but making things better for the people, with one of the key questions in it, whether consumers will actually accept it all. Now, during the discussion, we looked at large systems and smaller ones, and clearly digitalization plays a role everywhere in the large systems and wholesale market optimization. For example, in Europe, where I come from, TSOs are together working on the common grid model, on an awareness system in real time, on a transparency platform for the markets. But particularly much needs to be done with decentralized energy resources and the distribution system. Digitalization facilitates the physical integration, but it also enables new forms of operations that were not possible previously, and perhaps very importantly, market design, which is key to enable business models and revenue stacking for distributed energy resources. Digitalization obviously strengthens the links between all of us, between market players, between the different parts of the system. It helps coordination, it helps system optimization between all the actors. And the consumer can be put into the center largely only because of digitalization and innovation. At the very bottom, you see a bit of caveats. The energy use of the data centers and also cybersecurity will be concerns. And blockchain, my next topic, might help with this, but also carries its own issues. There was a whole session about blockchain, one of the best ones I've experienced. I haven't been to that many conferences focused on blockchain, but on a few. The majority of the blockchain use cases today are around those things listed there in the first bullet item. Verifying how much renewable energy, certificates of origin, and so on, has been produced and where it's going, whether for carbon renewable credits or for retail-based transactions, and also leading towards peer-to-peer trading and the billing that comes with it. Peer-to-peer, of course, although there are pilots about it, depends a lot on laws and regulations being updated. There's a lot of startups and pilots. These numbers are not only for peer-to-peer, but they are pretty impressive of how much has come along in just a couple of short years. Blockchain can lower transaction costs, increase cyber security through the very distributed nature of the ledger, and increase visibility for system operators of distributed generation. This also all depends on the regulatory framework, and there was some discussion whether it's changing and adjusting fast enough. It can enable demand-side flexibility by aggregating, connecting, and managing the distributed resources, as for example, TENET, the Dutch and German TSO, has been trialing. Blockchain has the potential to open up new connections in the energy marketplace that weren't possible before. There's a company called Electron, which is opening new forms of collaboration through the creation of marketplaces that combine multiple bits from across the electricity system. Another company called Sun Exchange is opening up new avenues to finance small solar equipment. Biggest challenges are around interoperability of different blockchains. For example, is the proof of authority the right way to have faster computational speeds and less energy use than, for example, you have in the infamous Bitcoin examples? And you want to have the right connection, as always in electricity, between the digital world, modeling it and being the basis for the markets, and the physical world with Kirchhoff laws and many other physical laws. When it comes to artificial intelligence and big data, let's not forget that machine learning is only one part of AI, and AI is one part of big data and relies on big data analysis. They're all enablers to make the best use of new mountains of data and guide the human decision makers and perhaps then afterwards the automated decision-making and control if consumers accept it and trust in it. The goal in the end is not 100% automation, but with the growing complexity of our energy systems, expert alone cannot do the job without the help of data and analytics. Data is, of course, the fuel that powers AI. The quality of AI output depends on the quality of the input, and greater complexity requires greater intelligence. More nonlinear, more real-time than fossil fuels, more consumer empowerment, more choice brings more uncertainties and degrees of freedom. This all needs to be used, and data and AI can help us. Advanced weather forecasts and forecasting in general came out of this session as one of the key applications playing today of AI. That's bringing together not only wind, solar, and weather, but also the demand and the near real-time grid data, and thus improve costs and perhaps also reliability. You want to combine these different things, and that's the strength of those approaches of AI. And if you do it right, substantial reductions in energy use in buildings, for example, have been reported by Be Bright. Again, some caveats here. The energy consumption from IT servers, I already mentioned, is going up from 2 to 8% over the next years of overall electricity demand. That's quite high numbers, and we want to be sure that as we spend more and more energy also on data, we get the payback from it that pays for it all. The new consumer in the digital world was the next session. It started out with a Finnish example, where Finland is very far advanced compared to other countries in Europe and the world with smart meter rollout that are part of the regulation. And 9% of the retail consumers have chosen to be exposed to dynamic pricing. That helps a lot. That's what other countries are still missing, like my own country, Germany. And it helps to connect retail and wholesale markets. Consumers do seem to be willing to change their behavior if they can see the benefits. Automation is needed for that, and ready-made services for the consumer are key to have the demand response. Many initiatives to unlock demand-side flexibility were discussed. In Germany, Sonnen and also Next Kraftwerke are aggregating different kinds of flexibility successfully into the German market. The market design should ultimately incentivize the deployment of renewable generation in the entire power system, enable the participation of small actors as flexibility providers and the bankable market. Improving competition is a challenging part of it, certainly for those countries that have chosen competition as their industry structure, because reliability must be ensured. Grid fees probably need to evolve quite a bit, and we discussed that in this session, towards high-resolution pricing to give a fair deal to all the consumers and the right incentives for flexibility. Decentralized generation is still a marginal part, but is key to engage the consumer in the energy transition. I'm running a bit over time. I'm trying to speed up here. Thank you for not beating me over the head yet.
That's coming very soon.
Oh, very soon. That sounds good. So I'll switch back and forth between the slides, and that will confuse us all, like maybe you too. Broadening energy access through innovation was the second last session I need to summarize here. It's a sustainable development goal, energy access, and interlinked with many others. And you see some examples here that surprised many of us in the room. For the future, this isn't valid for the past, but for the future, it's expected that of the hundreds of millions of people that don't have access yet that will gain it soon, 60% might likely come through off-grid solutions, microgrids, for example. And for that, the governance will be crucial. Deployment and dissemination of innovations are key challenges here, as with all innovation. Off-grid solutions often implementable faster and cheaper than others. Financing and risk, of course, were big issues when it comes to broadening energy access in Africa and elsewhere. And you can see some caveats here where there are particular difficulties in making money flow from private investors or institutional investors in the Western world towards places like Africa. Mobile money exists in some places in Africa, but not in others and not in India. So there are also differences between the continents that still need to work on it. And at the bottom, you see a few easy sentences that the moderator of that session put together. Make it easy to do the business. Start with the needs of the people. Don't forget productive use. Localized solutions. Ensure product quality to not lose trust. Don't work in silos. Make it affordable and maintain scale. Future grids.
Now, Konstantin, I'm afraid I am going to have to wind you up now because we are a couple of minutes over. I do apologise, but I do think because we've got the discussion period afterwards, if there's areas that we haven't managed to cover, then we can actually discuss it more generally. Yep. Sorry to cut you off.
Thank you for letting me put this last slide. It's about doing it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ruud, would you like to tell us about your sessions?
So thank you very much to IRENA and the people here at the IRENA Innovation Week to trust me to report back. Although I think the level of trust is relatively low, considering they give me all these speaking points. So I won't kind of let you down. So
remember, I will be interrupting if it goes over 10 minutes.
But it's the speaking points. So first of all, I think it was a great track, the electrification track. I'm working for the European Commission, and the discussion is really kind of at the heart of what we're doing today. Not only about what the period for the regulatory framework which we're developing right now for the period 2020 to 2030, but also because of the decarbonization strategy which we're developing right now at the moment. So I've been really lucky to be here. And I think one of the key aspects for me, at least, is that there's a lot of unknowns for us in Brussels, but I think for any policymaker, people who write to do policies. And now I kind of know some of the unknowns. Some I didn't know before. So I think that is at least a good starting point. So what other knowns, I think, came out of a kind of session? First of all, electrification, more electrification seems to be a trend everywhere. So we had people from all over the world, and everyone is talking about the higher levels of electrification to get to the decarbonization, to get kind of to this energy transition. It's happening global. And also that, of course, this is driven by the prices for both renewable energy and the enabling technologies, which have been falling and expected to continue to fall. And some of these expectations are really amazing. If you really start thinking about what could be happening, we do know that renewable electricity is going to be a central role in the future. The other thing which kind of came up in almost all of the sessions we did, heat, transport, electricity storage, is about this kind of this pricing for electricity. Giving electricity kind of a value so that if we have abundant electricity or if you have scarce electricity, that is reflected, and then all of these electrification options can be based on that. The other one, I think, which was good that everyone reflected upon, this was, it's also known that it's not going to be 100% electricity. So whatever happens in the electricity sector, it will have an impact on other sectors, whatever those may be. Electricity is not completely isolated. Now, then about the unknowns, and I'm very lucky that there were also unknowns, otherwise I would feel really stupid. But even the people, the experts on the fields, there were questions about who are going to own the things. Like in the electricity sector, we're used to utilities kind of owning TSOs, DSOs, etc. But if we're going to do electrification of these energy sectors, this whole plethora of stakeholders is going to expand. And who owns what and who does what? How are they going to respond? How are they going to engage? How is my grandmother going to engage if she has to kind of deal with this more electricity, if she has to go make choices about electricity? How will the market evolve? How will these new load profiles evolve? Almost everyone had like a picture of load profiles at those places where demand is high, at those times that supply is high. But how is this going to evolve if everyone wants to kind of supply, take advantage of when the supply is high? How is it going to evolve if everyone wants to kind of supply when demand is high? Very interesting questions around it. How is it managed? And of course, one of the interesting questions is where is the money going to be made across these whole supply chains? And then one kind of, philosophical question which came up a lot is about what is, if these prices are going to down and renewables are going to be too cheap to meter, what is this going to look like? This is really kind of a complete unknown to me. So the only thing which I can say is there are plenty of opportunities, and I'll quickly go through the other ones. But I think one of the key questions which came up continuously, and that's related to this opportunity question, is the word scale. In heat, you would need massive scale-up of electricity to get this electrification done. In transport, the same. In hydrogen, the same. It's an enormous field of opportunities right now at the moment. Heat. Electrification of heat is going to be associated also with dual benefits. Looking more better at how are you using your heat, it also increases energy efficiency. Electrification of heat is going to be difficult because these profiles of heat are very unique to the specific location and the specific use. We heard examples of the industry. We had examples of small businesses. We also heard examples about supermarkets. Supermarkets using heat for cooling, but how can you use then the excess heat to maybe kind of heat apartments around your supermarkets? The amazing opportunities in terms of innovation, not only in terms of the heat pumps, for example, which are continuing to evolve and continuing to get better, but also, actually, also there was a discussion about other renewable heating technologies and the kind of innovation that is taking place there in terms of geothermal, in terms of solar thermal. The other thing was that when they were asked about policy questions, there was what policy frameworks are needed. There were actually some clear answers: carbon pricing, good targets for renewable heating, which haven't been in place, a continuous funding, a kind of push for research and innovation in the electrification. One of the key outcomes was we need to put renewable heating or electrification of heating more at a higher pedestal. We need to talk more about it because it's an enormous, like I said, an enormous challenge. The scale is enormous, so everyone needs to get involved. Transport, again, the numbers are amazing. one presenter said, okay, in 2030 we're going to have 30 to 50 million electric vehicles in Europe, in the EU. That means 300 to 500 gigawatts of flexible capacity. We had to go back and recalculate these numbers. But then we had this morning Professor Lei saying in Beijing we're going to have 6 million electric vehicles, which is 60 gigawatts of flexible capacity. These are enormous numbers, enormous opportunities which are there. And I think one of the sessions in this session was really kind of this grasp of the electric vehicles are growing very rapidly. 4 million at the beginning of the year, 5 million right now at the moment. It's growing very rapidly, so it really is at a tipping. We're seeing a tipping point there, especially, of course, in the passenger vehicles. Again, this whole discussion about innovation, not in terms of just the batteries, there's a lot of innovation going on, but also on the whole idea about how you're going to manage this energy system. I was at the IRENA Assembly at the beginning of the year in January. I think a lot of the discussion at the Ministerial Roundtable was renewable electricity is cheap, that makes electric vehicles cheaper. That was a lot of discussion. And we're here today, 8 months further, and there was a whole discussion about, okay, we know that, forget it. We're going to now have to talk about how we're going to manage this system. Where we're going to do the smartness of these electric vehicles. Is it in the electric vehicles? Is it in the charging stations? Who is going to own it? What is going to happen if you don't own your vehicle anymore, but someone else is going to own it? So we're already moving in 8 months this discussion of innovation forward. So, I mean, one of the things I could say is don't wait another 2 years for an IRENA Innovation Week because so much things are happening. Maybe at the end of the year, we should come back together again. Key questions, again, of the policy is that electric vehicles, again, are not going to be in isolation. So if you're developing policies around that, how does these policies about electric charging of vehicles connect to the rest of the energy system? Again, some very interesting questions there. Electricity storage. Again, one of the examples was that one person gave kind of a scale of what we have in terms of stationary battery storage in the world. He said about 2 gigawatt. And then the next presenter came and said, wait a second, you forgot another gigawatt in China. We're at 3 gigawatts. So again, here, the scale and the rapid development of these electricity storage is really, really interesting. Also, I thought was quite interesting is that I know IRENA did a batteries kind of cost report recently, but a lot of the discussion today is also about the value and kind of the multiple value streams what electricity storage could be doing right now at the moment. So there was a whole discussion about, okay, how can we make sure that the system around allowing for electricity storage kind of makes this value feasible or visible, actually, so that all of these innovators can come in and at the right point in time, use these batteries not only to do one service, frequency, another service instead of peakers, but all these things at the same time with kind of the right signals in place. The other thing which I think was interesting is, again, here you see this kind of the scale of complexity, because the storage projects which were presented were one person had storage at their household. Another person gave an example of storage developed by a utility. Another one gave an example of storage which is developing actually by an electricity generator connected to CHP. This is already, you see, a plethora of options there for electricity storage. Now the last one, well, we'll get back to it, is scale, 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 also for hydrogen. And here it was quite interesting that we did a poll. And here the question was, okay, how much of the renewable electricity will be used for hydrogen? Before the session, people said about 10 to 20% in 20 years' time. After the poll, people said actually it's going to be less. So only 2 to 10% is going to be used, of the renewable electricity is going to be used for hydrogen. And I think, well, this is my interpretation, is because through this whole session, we saw such a plethora of options, not only for the renewable electricity. Hydrogen is enabling more renewable electricity coming in place, but renewable electricity is enabling all of these new opportunities again. So there's a really kind of a visual circle of continuous development of new ways of electrification, which then induce more renewable electricity, but then again, which also induces new options for renewable electricity in these end-use sectors. So with that, I'm going to end.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm almost perfectly on time. Johannes, can I ask you to come and give us your presentation on markets and citizens? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm an engineer, I have to fix it, and as a mom, I have to deliver. Because we just ended my session, so I didn't get the time to put it on paper, on slides for you. Regarding citizen market, we have learned that a lot of change. You have in the mix of energy, of renewable energy, you have a lot of multi-stakeholder. What are the roles of the utilities and the citizens? So it's come up that the big investors want also to have their share, the return of investment. And we, the citizens, who are putting in place, who releasing our roofs, how are we going also to play our role? Those were the questions. And we went then to examples from Mexico, who's take the model of auctions. Sometimes it goes higher, it goes lower, then it's push the competition and then bring the price down. And after we got the model of Australia, which is the embedded model. I really found it fantastic. And we're already implementing it in my country, in Burkina Faso. And that means that you have small networks and connecting those small networks, gathering that and put it on the grid. This is very interesting. Again, those are models that can be bring at a large scale. We need to find the how. Solutions are there. We don't need to rethink the wheel, but just implement it. But the problem is that I took from several sessions, not only those that I had to report on, is we talk a lot about, but when it comes to implementation, I don't see that many on the field. And during my session, I showed a video, what we have doing on the field. Less slide, but concretely what's really happening and changing life of the people on the field. So, you know, the terms of cooperatives comes a lot. Community is a terminology that has come a lot. And we're assisting also the shift of power in the both sense, because the utility, it seems that the consumers have more trust on the cooperatives that they created themselves, that you have that ownership. And I heard also during the blockchain technology sessions that it's disruptive. But we need to, the term disruptive is a good word. What are you disrupting for? Disrupting is good to reach more people, to lift up the bottom up the pyramid people. This is very critical to have. Then I bring you now to the next session that we have, that I was one of the panelists. It was empowering the citizens. All we are doing, all the sessions were about empowerment. How do we empower our people? Whether it's the global north or the global south. That was the two parts. I was having an example, the initiative Mamalet for Sustainable Energy, it's a bottom-up approach, community-based and owned by the community, and this has been rewarded by the United Nations, has one of the 14 breakthrough solutions achieving the SDGs. And the global south also, you have solutions that the north also can take advantage on. We are not sitting and waiting that the solutions comes from the north, but we are solution creators as well. And in the video, the solar lanterns that you have seen, it's my creation as an engineer. Because the solutions are there. It's a matter of how we are owning it. Acceptance are there already. We don't need to go into villages and show them and ask them what to do. Just observe, listen, design, and propose. That is really the way that your consumer, and also I learned a new terminology from our friend from Catalan, not prosumer, but pro-users. Because energy, we are not consuming it, we are using it to produce goods. I think this is also one of the lovely findings that we have. And trust the community. And the last session of yesterday, trust became a commodity. That is something interesting. I know that insurers, this is a business of insurance company, but trust seems to be a commodity that you build links, you connect the dots, and bring it as a good. So what will be, this is my question to all of you, including myself, what is the place and the share of the pro-user in this? Because obviously, the citizens, they get loan, they have their assets, you make use of those assets. What also they can get out of it as an investor, but obviously they are investors. This is something that we need to think of and to come up with a solution. We talk about empowering the informal sector. You know that in the global south, most of our economies rely on the informal sector. How do we empowering them? Link energy to productive use, whether it's an agri to optimize, and how to industrialize our economies. We need energy, but what kind of energy? And we need also to localize and to mix it. If I have wind in my area, so I might use wind energy. If I have a lot of water, that I might use hydro. And if the sun grilling me, like in Burkina Faso, and sometimes 50%, I might use solar energy to cool. And I think that to lower the pricing, it's about affordability also, because in our continent and in Asia as well, it's about affordability. Technology is there. People, you don't need to convince the people that renewable energy is good. It's about affordability and access to finance. We talk about it. We need also to have the right to get long-term loans. This is critical because as you're investing massively into those new technology, your consumers as well need to have that fair rate on borrowing and having loans, their countries, because we can't compete. When you have companies who have bank license, and the small lady in the countryside who just have access to 50 euro and she has to pay 100%. How can you transfer the technology on the field there down there and allow processing, agri-processing, and have that inclusive green growth that we are all sign off within the 2030 agenda? I think here we got all the solutions. It's a matter of going and implementing, talk the walk, walk the talk. That is the most important to do, and I think that I want to thank my brother Adnan. It's really a brother, it's not the CEO for me, it's my brother, for bringing all of us together to find the solution, but it's really time to go and make it happen. Because it's about growing the pie and sharing the GDP that we deserve. If I'm educated, you are hired. This is a simple thing. And if we think ahead, investing, what we are doing is investing in our own future. No more than that. Solutions are there, and look at the global south as well as producers of technologies, not people who's begging. I'm just only the tree who hiding the forest. So I will make my presentation available. I just wrap up, and I hope that I have been clear, and people who was in my session, feel free to then pop up your complementary thoughts on the screen. I thank you very much for your kind attention, and I'm available to discuss and to collaborate because it's about networking and not hiding. And I will finish at, technology, don't have sex, don't have color, don't have borders. So let's work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, we've got a number of questions that have come through the app, but I first wanted to offer Constantin the chance to finish what he was going to say. Are there any things you want to mention, or are you happy just that the slide was up?
No, of course not. That was about grids. Future grids, smaller and larger. That was the whole session this morning. Many of you in the room were probably there in any case, because it was in the same big room, so I don't want to repeat it all. Just that, from my perspective, both help to integrate renewables. Both are innovative things. Both are driven by innovations, ultra-high voltage and microgrid controllers. And the cooperation to make the glue, so to speak, between the very small and the very large global grids, that still needs work. And that goes back to one of the key insights from the previous Innovation Week. Technology is coming about pretty nicely. Policy and markets also need a lot of innovation, and I think that holds true for the cooperation that's needed across country boundaries to have the right trading rules and between transmission and distribution at all levels within each country.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting you mentioned this idea of policy, because Ruud, you mentioned the fact that people in your session were discussing the fact that we know what we need to do on the policy front, that there are simple answers. So why isn't it happening in the way we want it to happen, and how do we make it happen?
I think what I thought was really interesting in terms of the policy discussions what we had was, of course, I come from the European Commission, and we just finished kind of discussing a proposal on renewable energy, and we're still discussing the proposals on electricity market design. And some of the presentations said, okay, in the European Union, for example, there's now much more emphasis on kind of the self-consumer or the pro-user in the legislative framework, which is a step forward. But then at the same time, someone else said in another session, don't look at Europe anymore. You know, there's opportunities way beyond what is Europe doing. So, of course, one of the things which is happening, yes, the policy framework which was mentioned is targets, higher targets, and carbon pricing. But beyond that, there's a whole level of kind of translating these targets and these kind of carbon pricing into a whole set of regulatory frameworks. And that takes some time. But at the same time, we need to kind of continuously work on that, as the innovators are continuously working on not only developing the technology, but implementing the technologies in new ways. So there really has to be kind of trying to find synergies. And one of those ways to do the synergies is things like this. Having people who are working in the field, not only from Europe, but from around the world, sitting here and kind of discussing what they know, but also what they don't know. Because as a policymaker, you have to kind of anticipate both of these things. You know, what is happening, but also what the innovators don't know yet, but you should be allowing for without, of course, ensuring that kind of these social benefits are being maintained. So it's a process which needs continuous education and continuous discussion, and that's why I think these things like today are so important.
Thank you. Yannis, did you have any thoughts on that? I was just particularly interested in what you were saying about mini-grids and how bringing those to communities can actually be really transformational. Are there any specific issues? I mean, obviously every country's different, but are there specific issues, perhaps in Africa, with regulations around grid connections and the grid that might need to be resolved?
Yes, indeed. You have regulatory framework issues, but myself, I did work with in Burkina Faso with my president, and it just passed last April. In Burkina Faso, we are far ahead, I think, even worldwide. People don't know it. You can produce, sell, and distribute yourself. That our law allows it, because it was important. I just said, having the opportunity to go into different sessions, I saw the bottlenecks, and I say to our MPs, you really need to unlock. If we want to have and consider everybody as investor, even if you have 50 cents or €1, you can invest, for instance. Our diaspora, we are more than 10 million outside. But if we decide all to invest €15 a year, So that not working, because Greenpeace in our session, for instance, was saying, nobody cannot come and empower you, you empower yourself. And I'm happy that finally NGOs start understanding that empowerment should come from us, but not from somebody else coming to tell us what to do. And I'm very happy and glad to hear it, and I hope that others will follow. I think that you don't need to start from scratch. Solutions exist. For instance, we are happy to share our rule of law with other countries to implement it. Regarding a blockchain, I didn't wait for it. When I was start talking about it, people think that I was coming from Mars or that I smoked something. I said, no, this is the future. The more people that I will have digitalized, the more independency that I give to them. But ownership of data is very important, that we have a specific ministry, which is a female as well, who's working on those issues. It's very important in the era of big data, how we at the bottom of the pyramid, our data also is very important. So it's not, often I receive emails that is, so I keep my temper because so often you want to say, but what is going on? It's important, they just ask you a lot of insight. I say, well, okay, if you pay me, I'm going to do that. Learn the people to ask the right questions also, it's important. This is my takeaway for you and from our people. That's what we keep learning to our people in the countryside. If the proposal that they bring to you on the table, if you think that you can get at least 30% of margin, it's a no-go. And if you don't know the rules, don't play the game. Anyway, you're going to lose. This is also our way of working to educate our people. Because, of course, I got the opportunity to go to school. That is my duty as a traditional authority to go back and help the people. And I'm going all through Africa, as I said. And also in the Netherlands, I'm doing also lessons at the University of Delft. I'm telling you, what we have, if you have a knowledge, share it. Don't keep it for yourself. And you will get a better world.
I mean, I think that's one of the key things that we've learned is that IRENA having events like this, it is about education, communication, knowledge, best practice, and bringing those things together is how we actually achieve transformation. But Constantine, I know you were trying to say something.
Yeah, I want to connect the thought of the African progress that you were describing with this question of trust we were discussing earlier. In Sigray, which was part of my own presentation earlier today, we put a special emphasis on disseminating power systems knowledge to Africa for a whole bunch of reasons, but two of them I want to emphasize. One is there's so much electric growth in Africa with the electrification, but also the industrialization and the population and the economic growth. Hopefully that'll be handled sustainably and not repeating fossil fuel concentrations we've done elsewhere. But the other thing is also much more optimistic potential, and you've mentioned some of these things. Africa has the chance to leapfrog many of us into the digital world. And what you're describing from Burkina Faso goes right in that direction. And coming back to the question of trust, which as a former association manager is a really big issue for myself. For me, when I try to imagine how we trust each other while we're dealing over blockchain platforms or power exchanges or distribution system operator platforms, all these platforms coming out of our ears and all connect with each other, and they all want to assume we can pay. And there will all be some mechanisms to do that. And my impression is, but I'm quite unsure, that some of this will have to do with things like they're happening on Airbnb or Uber or Facebook. People rate each other how they perform, because in a little village you know whom to trust and whom not, but as soon as you're in a city size, that's over and you need some other basis for it. So when we come to this platform world, this energy cloud, which hopefully will help the places still to be electrified to leapfrog ahead of many of us, this trust in a platform world, I think, will be a key issue.
And I think, I mean, one of the questions that's been asked that's come through the app is what are the relevant business models to make the best of digital innovation in the energy sector? Now, obviously, if we could answer that question, there'd be a lot of people running out and starting new businesses suddenly. But, you know, what are your thoughts on how we can best take advantage of the opportunity? Konstantin, can I start with you?
Well, being aware of what's going on is, of course, one big aspect. And your example with being aware of blockchain is fantastic. But two other aspects came up in the sessions that I was in. Regulation can encourage or can block certain kinds of innovation. And regulation, of course, has a really important job to keep things fair and to avoid excess profits and to make sure the lights stay on and so on. Some regulators in Europe have played with the concept of sandboxes, they call it, for example, in Great Britain, where, and Germany has that too, where for certain innovative areas defined very precisely, you're allowed to get out of the normal regulation and try something entirely new so it can be tried out in a realistic environment. And the hope, of course, is that if it works, the legal changes that are needed for the regulator to then allow innovation to really hit the ground running come quickly enough after that.
Yeah. Ruud, can I ask you that question, but with a little additional thing to it, which is you were talking about the speed of innovation. So there is a challenge, obviously, for regulators because of the speed of innovation, but surely there's also a challenge for business models because of the speed of innovation. If you're deploying a technology and spending large amounts of money getting it out on the ground, what happens if it's obsolete by the time you get it up there?
First of all, I want to reflect to this question on this business models in general. And this is just, I'm just asking myself a question, and then hopefully people can answer it. One of the presenters in one of the sessions on electrification of heat presented a case study of South Tyrol, where he modeled the system 2050, which was almost completely decarbonized. And he talked about, okay, what does it mean for electrification rates and stuff like that. But the last slide he showed was the investment flows for his system, decarbonized energy system. And these investment flows actually reversed. So in the current situation, because of energy, you know, oil and gas, etc., so there's investment flows essentially going into the country and something which is kind of recirculated inside the world. In this decarbonization scenario, 80% was investment flows in the country and only a small bit coming in there. So I think this is going to be having a massive implication for business models. And one of the possible implications of that is that these business models flows are going to be much more local. So that might be an opportunity to have also much more transparent business flows, much more engagement of the people who eventually you produce the energy for, which produce value again. So I think this actually renewable energy creates new opportunities for business models which are directly linked to this whole issue of sustainability. And then, yes, people are going to fail. I think what you're seeing right now at the moment is that a lot of startups are coming up right now at the moment. And I did some work previously on electricity storage. And I remember that many kind of startup companies around the world are developing now these new electricity storage, either as project developers or they're developing these mini grids, etc. Quite a few of them not making money, but they're making a lot of money because they're being bought by big companies who don't have a clue what they're doing. So I think, you know, part of this whole business model might be, at the moment where we're at right now, it's not about making money, but about getting that experience. And the value of that experience is going to be so useful that, like, everyone around the world, like whether you're developing projects in Africa or in Japan or wherever you're going to be, that value of having that experience, that is something which I think is very important, and really kind of developing the capacity not only to develop your own country, but then also those around you.
Thank you. Now, Konstantin, I know that you had a point you wanted to make, but could I just ask, the audience, do you have questions? Do you have points that you'd like to make? Do you have issues that you think should have been brought up? We have someone just here in the front, I think. Hasim, microphone's just coming towards you.
My name is Bahaj. I work for the University of Southampton, UK. I had a question actually related to the infrastructure. Who owns the infrastructure for charging electric vehicles or whatever, heat networks and so forth? I don't think that's an issue or a bottleneck, because a lot of the infrastructure that we have now is actually paid for by the taxpayer. And now the government's floated it out and gave it to private companies. So it's run by private companies. So any charging infrastructure will be run by a private company. They have to invest in it and so on, like the broadband, fiber optic broadband. So I don't really think it's an issue. So we don't need to create bottlenecks. So that's one of the things. With regard to development, energy for development, I think the major issue for me, and I have projects in Africa in energy for development, is really affordability. Those 1 billion people actually have not got enough money to pay the current going rate for the national grid, let alone for mini grids. And therefore, affordability have to come into the balance of things. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any points that they'd like to make? I can't see any hands there. So, Konstantin, I might come back to you. Did you want to make that point?
It relates a little bit to your remark about e-mobility. One of the strains of discussions in the digitalization session was it's partly happening in the cities. I mean, the big systems, the national systems, potentially even the global systems are very important and they keep it all together. But if you think about where sector coupling is happening, where the electrification of heating and transport is really happening and is really leading to a lot of charging loads, for example, and where the distribution grid will need to become smarter and perhaps also reinforced. That'll be happening in the cities, and they will need to connect city planning, how they deal with their parking spaces, with the electric planning, with the gas planning, with the heating planning, with the storage of heat underneath the city, and so on. And they also are a key spot where the interface in the electricity system on data between transmission and distribution needs to function right. So the cities will have a major role in this transition.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, we're actually coming towards the end of our discussion period, but I have a question that I'd like to ask each of you to answer. And it's one of the questions that actually came through the app, which is, I'm from a coal-dominated country. To change that, should we put our limited resources to promote digitalisation or decentralised electrification? So if you were a coal-dominated country, what would you do? Your Highness?
I missed the beginning.
So the question basically was from someone who's saying they're from a coal-dominated country. Should they put their limited resources into decentralisation and digitalisation, or should they continue down the path of current coal or clean coal?
I think, as I said, from one day to another day, awareness is something. But what you're able to do at this moment, people cannot, from one day to another day, switch off completely the coal or nuclear. Let's be honest, it's not a fairy tale here. So, but it's good that we bring that awareness from kindergarten. How are you using energy? This is important. Make our kids native sustainable. Africans, for instance, we have that advantage that we can start green. We are already green by nature. It's about greening up, and we will stay green. But for the transition, and the OECD countries, they really need to go step by step. Otherwise, we will be creating another problems in terms of jobs, because how are we going to deal with those who's working under coal mines? But it needs to go step by step. And I think that is but it's good that we have that awareness. I don't push them to leave it completely, but it's step by step that they will leave it. And technology also will bring the solution, because we were visiting one of the sites that IRENA organized, but your waste can be my input to do something great. And CO2, it's a problem, but when we take the CO2 combine with other components, but we have any other things to make hydrogens. This is good. I think that the scientists working on it, we need to invest also in research development and fundamental research to find a solution. This is very important, and I will end with the quote of my grandmother. If you don't look for the solution will find you on the way that you don't like it. So we should really invest on research development and find our way.
Thank you. Ruud?
Yeah, as someone from a coal-dominated country, that could be anywhere, since we're here in Germany, so I don't know who gave the answer. But I want to reflect on this thing about scarce resources, actually, that part of the question. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to kind of, if you look at the energy system, yes, we will need to put investments in place to change this energy transition. But I think the investments needed for this energy transition dwarf by the economic opportunities which can derive from this energy transition. And then if you talk about this question about scarce resources, yes, you might have scarce resources right now at the moment. But I think looking around the table over here, everyone I've heard was looking about these opportunities, these scales, people saying, actually, I would like to have more competitors because there's so much opportunities over there. So I think I would say don't focus too much on the investments in the scarce resources that you have today, but consider about what you can create actually through the energy transition.
I'd be close to what Apse said with a twist. It's a transition that obviously takes time, but that I think has to start now and be planned now. And in doing that, don't forget that you got neighbors. And you need to support each other. You're importing clean energy, green energy from them at times. But also your coal may help them during the next windless winter week when they don't have enough. So plan it in a way together, and never forget that in this renewables transition in electricity, there will be regional surpluses and deficits, and together you can make it work until you're all eventually, in a few decades, in a perfectly reliable, decarbonized energy system.
Thank you very much, and that actually segues beautifully into our next session. So could I could I ask you to thank our speakers for their contributions this afternoon? It was thoroughly enjoyable. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. And if I may, could I ask Auke Long, who is the head of Statnett, Norway's transition system operator, to join us. Funnily enough, the reason I thought it was such a good segue to the session from Constance's comment is he's going to be talking about what it's like to work with neighbours, about how interconnection is actually much more than just wires and technologies, but it's also politics and culture and market operations. And at the same time, if I could ask Ernesto Chiora, who's the Chief Innovability Officer at NL, to join us. He's going to be talking about the experience of operating in different parts of the world with different markets, operating systems and applications. So, and as Konstantin mentioned, sector coupling, I think, is going to be a very big area of interest. So, Auke, if I could ask you to do your presentation. Ernesto, hi.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this great event, and I should also thank Konstantin for introducing my topic. I have received 8 minutes to tell you about 3 things. That's why the future is electric. What does my company do to make that happen? And why we have to innovate market design and system operations. And innovation is the critical word in this conference. So why is the future electric? This slide was produced in 2012 when I was listening to 5 CEOs of oil companies. And they were talking about the Arctic, which was the next frontier, because oil prices would be $150 $130 per barrel. And that was in 2012, they were saying. And then I wondered, looking at the costs of renewables at that time, what would that mean in terms of dollar cents per kilowatt hour? What does $125 per barrel mean in dollar cents per kilowatt hour? And being the CEO of an electricity company, dollar cents per kilowatt hour are much more interesting. And I figured out that if you extrapolate the costs of solar and wind in 2012, in 2020, 1 kilowatt hour of crude would cost the same as 1 kilowatt hour of solar. And if you had the choice between those two, you would not be in doubt what you would choose. So instead of saying that the future is the Arctic, which those CEOs were saying, I said the future is electric. And from that point in time, we have been working hard on that issue. So, what is Statnett? Statnett is the national grid company of Norway. We run a mostly hydro system. It's about 11,000 kilometers. And the interesting thing is that a lot of power already today is on the decentralized level. We actually take power in on the DSO level, 40% of our power. We are also responsible for the interconnections between Norway and Sweden, Denmark, also to Finland. We have also to Germany in the future, and we will also have an interconnected to the UK. So this is all about Statnett. So why do we in Statnett think that the future is electric? Well, we think we have mainly solved the issue of decarbonizing the power sector, and I think lots of stories have been told about that today. And if you have affordable power, you should try to address the two other big sectors, which are heat and industry and transportation. And we also have technologies available to do that. We have hydrogen, heat pumps, batteries, and they can do the work there. So having the solution for the power sector, we think power can drive carbon out of transportation and heat and industry. And actually, this sector coupling will have some nice feedbacks and strengthen this process over time. And basically, that boils down to that the future is electric. What does my company contribute to that? We have been working on this quite extensively, and I must admit that we have a very good starting point, having almost a complete hydropower system. So it's not many countries who are that lucky, but we have a very lucky starting point. But still, you need to develop also that. And we say it's basically about three things. It's about building stronger grids, and that's what we're doing. We are building interconnectors to the UK and to Germany, and we have already a set of interconnectors. It's about smarter systems, and it is about better markets. And those three things you have to work on continuously. You have to innovate on all those three things all the time, because then you get a very good dynamics and bring the industry forward. So what about the stronger grids? As you see from the map, Norway on the left-hand side up. We are connecting to Denmark. Denmark has a lot of wind power. It used to have a lot of coal, but now it has a lot of wind power. We have a lot of hydro, as I said, and in the future we will also connect to Germany and the UK. Those connections, they are being built because of the synergies you can create because of the differences between the systems. And we have seen some very good examples on that. If the wind is not blowing, hydropower can support. And sometimes we have a dry year in Norway where there's a very low level of precipitation, and we could import power from our neighboring countries. So there is a huge synergy in connecting and working together with your neighbors through interconnections. And obviously it creates value, because we use those interconnectors. We export power when prices are high, and we import power when prices are low. That's kind of the Dutch way of making money, selling expensive and buying cheap. So what about innovation? Well, a few words about that. We see that our system, even if it looks so good, is being challenged. More renewables get also into our system. Wind power is being built in Sweden. It is actually affecting our system. We are building more wind power. So more wind is in the system and challenging the balancing of this system. By building those interconnections, we actually also create some, I would say, instability, because for 1 hour, the interconnector might import, and the other hour, the interconnector might export. And that are huge volumes which are then circulating into this system and creating some type of instability. So actually, this is also challenging our system. And then we see, of course, that pro-users, as they are now called, are entering into the picture, and they have a behavior which also might change the pattern. So from the situation where production was following consumption, we probably go through a situation where consumption will follow production, which is an interesting paradigm. So we are actually now innovating our system on balancing, having split up the area where we do the balancing in a much finer granularity, and demand basically the stability in each of them so that we can operate the system in total instability. So then, why is the future electric? Indeed, we see now costs of wind power in Norway being as low as 3 euro cents per kilowatt hour. And the wind is so stable that we can get it like 4,000 hours. And that's really a cost where you don't need any subsidies any longer. So this is going on, it's moving on, and we will just be able to produce more electricity, and we have to find good solutions for using that electricity. And that will help us to electrify the rest of the society. And then my last slide is, of course, the most important one, because with all this renewable stuff, will the system still work? I think that's a crucial question. We talked about trust. If we don't have a system where people trust that it will work, they will not use it. And this picture shows you what happens in the interaction between Denmark and Norway. And the yellow line is basically the wind power during 4 days in Denmark. And you see the first couple of days there is no wind. And then you see the interconnection, which is the gray line, which means that we export it as much as we could to Denmark so that they could fill up the remaining, and then you see the demand on top of it. So they were able to satisfy demand in Denmark. But then the wind started blowing, and then you see what happens with the gray line, which is export from Norway to Denmark. It actually switches the other way around. We started importing power from Denmark to be able to handle the wind situation. And then the situation repeats itself. And the most interesting thing in this is during the weekend. There were 2 small peaks on demand. The blue line, you see the coffee cup and the television. And it is both on Saturday and on Sunday. And if you follow the gray line, you will see where this power came from. It was Norwegian hydropower which served the Danish consumers so that they both could have their coffee and watch, which I checked, Oprah Winfrey and Who Wants to Become a Millionaire. So yes, the system works. And it creates a lot of value, but also the security you need in order to really electrify the society. So indeed, the future is electric. Thank you.
Thank you, Elke. Ernesto, could I ask you to give your presentation? No.
Okay, I hope it runs. No, yes. Okay, I'm going to get the clicker. So we have been sitting for a long time. I would like to take care about you. So please stand up. All of you, stand up. Let's increase the oxygenation of our brain. And let's do something that is very simple. Let's do this. A big inspiration. And after you can put out the air. Okay, now you can sit. And at least the 20% of the performance of your brain has increased. No? And because I took care about you, this is something that we consider obvious, but we often forget that technology is nothing. That the most powerful weapon to get innovation is this. This is the most powerful technology that we use. Human intelligence, not artificial intelligence. But there is much more. human passion, willingness, determination, human love. Because if people love what they do, if people want to change the world, they do. It doesn't matter if some people say that it's impossible. So the first technology, the most important technology that we use is human love and human intelligence, not AI, not artificial intelligence. And these are real faces of our people. They come from Zambia, they come from South Africa, they come from Colombia, Chile, or Argentina, or United States, or Canada, or Greece, or Italy, or Spain, because we are active in 34 countries, including Japan and Russia. This is our country presence. Why I started from you, taking care about you? Because I think that companies must take care about people in the company before then taking care about technology. Because the technologies are nothing if you don't leverage on people's needs. Secondly, I think that people in the company are not enough. And I will demonstrate to you. Let's do this very fast exercise. Please do with me. Say in your mother tongue or in English as you prefer. If English is your mother tongue, it's easier for you. But just simple sum. Please, you, Felicia, make this very fast job with me. Come with me.
Okay.
Stand up. So it's better for your brain oxygenation.
Okay.
Let's make this simple sum. You say loud, please, this sum, and you can do it. 1,000 plus 40. What is the result is?
1,040.
Hey, please say loud. Hey, louder. Otherwise, I ask for coffee. Okay, now is?
2,040.
And you? Okay. 1, 2, 3. The result is?
2,070.
She's faster. Okay.
Sorry.
2,000 and now?
3,070.
And now?
3,090.
And now?
4,090.
And now?
5. Ooh.
5. Ooh, great. You say 5,000. You are 21 years old, I suppose. So you have studied more or less 15 years of mathematics that I canceled in 10 seconds. Because if you ask a 7-year-old guy or child, we could say, to make this sum, it takes much more time than you. And he or she says 4,100 instead of 5,000, as you said, and as I said, and as a Nobel candidate, a Nobel Prize winner that make this exercise with me said 5,000. Yeah. So we are okay. Thank you for your support.
My pleasure.
All of you said 5,000. Please say the truth. Raise the hand who said 5,000. Don't do this like Dr. Strangelove. Hey, do this. Okay, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. And you have studied mathematics for more than 20 years. But I canceled your mathematics skills in 10 seconds. Why? Because I asked you to make this simple sum. Add 1,000, add 1,000, add 1,000 4 times. So I have imprisoned your brain with a dominant rule. 10 seconds of a dominant rule can cancel 20, 30 years of mathematics that you studied. 10 seconds. So you can imagine what can do 10 years in a sector. They limit us. We become like stupid people because we know all the stuff. So we know all the rules and we follow the rules. If in 10 seconds I can cancel 20 or 30 years of mathematics, you can imagine what can do 10 or 20 years working as sector. You are limited. Me, I'm limited. All of us, we are limited because we know the sector. We know what we have to do and what we must avoid. Until a nerd, he doesn't know anything about our sector. He doesn't know that this is forbidden, forbidden, forbidden. He does everything that is forbidden. He avoids everything that is mandatory and invents a new innovation that can cancel this sector as we know it. This is innovation, unfortunately. It happened with Uber, it happened with Airbnb, it happened with a lot of Facebook, YouTube, and it happened with a lot of innovations because we are imprisoned by paradigms, prejudices that we have in mind. 10 years are more effective than 10 seconds. But in 10 seconds, Edward De Bono did with me, and I said 5,000, and I did with Felicia, and she said 5,000, and I did with you. So the problem is that we need those people. Would you lend your money to those people? Hey, they come to you and they ask for 1 million of euros or dollars, and you look at their faces, they look like crack addicted or something similar, no? Marijuana or what else? They are the founders of Microsoft, and they asked for $1 million for the 50% of the shares of Microsoft in 1978, and Ross Perot said no. $1 million for the 50% of Microsoft, according to this photo, sorry. And unfortunately, we must look for those people if we want to innovate the energy sector. That's why we are eager to meet some people like them. And every day they come to us, and we must be humble, open to listen to them. And hey, look at them. No, in a closed room with black eyes, black glasses, and Steve Jobs and Wozniacki, the founders of Apple. This is how they appear. But you don't know if they are two foolish and stupid people or two people who can change the world. You must listen to them. You must be humble. You must think that they can kill you. And you must every day accept that people really different from you, with different prejudices, with different paradigms, come to you, and they have zero revenues, and they can kill you. This is what happens with innovation. And that's why we have analyzed more than 3,800 startups in the last 3 years, and we have launched 160 projects with startuppers. And we have industrialized more than 40 of them. So we work with more than 40 of them in several countries. We have companies that came to us really asking for money to pay for the airline trip from India. And now the value of the company is more than 300 million in 2 years. They asked for money because they couldn't pay the airline trip. And now they are in Silicon Valley, and they are going for the first IPO, and the value is 300, 400 millions just to start. And they came to our factory of photovoltaic panels, say, oh, we are very honored to visit this place. 2 days ago, they came to us, please, we want to buy this factory. Hey, this is what happened in 2 years. And these are companies that we bought because we understood on 800, we bought only 3. Because we want to work with startups, not to invade them. And we buy them only if there is a huge technological gap that we must fill. But I give you some examples. I go very speed. This is a video. This is a robot that is cleaning our panels. We have in just one plant 4 million of panels in Mexico. We spend a lot of money cleaning them, but we must clean them without water because we are in the middle of the desert. So this is an example. This robot can clean 4 million of robots. We need many of them. And there is another robot that moves it string by string, and we can clean them. This is another way, this is another innovation. We made it with a startup. This is another example. We made it with a startup. Wind inspections, blade wind inspections. We are doing it with drones. Safety jacket. This is something that we invented. We have people cleaning our blades. We have people cleaning our electric poles. They are tied, but the risk is that they fall. If they fall, they break their backbone. So we have found some people, strange people from a startup, that have invented something really different. We have worked with them, and now this is the real safety jacket that our people have. If they fall down, there is an algorithm that immediately understand that they are falling, and what happens? Happens the same that happens with bikers, motorbikers, and with skiers. I'm going to show to you what happens. This is D-Air, a startup. This is what happens. An airbag inflates the jacket and saves the life of the biker. The same happens, this is a real video, huh? This is not with stuntmen. This is, you can check the airbag inflection in less than 400 milliseconds. So 0.4 seconds. This is another application. This is a real video, but with not a stuntman, with I don't remember the name, but this is airbag inflection. The same happens with our people. This is real innovation. Not talking about something that doesn't exist, but talking about something that we have already done to save the lives of our people. You can see another application. This is another real video. In this case, this jacket has saved the life of the skier. It's sure. And they thought it's dead, but after this great, huge fall, he standing up. Because you can see the airbag inflection. There is AI inside, robotization inside, machine learning inside, mathematics. There is an accelerometer inside. There is a lot of technology to save lives. And this is what we are doing with another startup. This is another example, marine energy. I think that marine energy will disrupt other renewables. There is more sea than earth in the world. So this is a real example. We are working in Australia with 1.5 megawatt machine. We are not talking about kilowatts, but megawatt. This is the last example, e-mobility. We need storage, but we have a lot of storage all around us. And try to think about billions of cars, electric cars, that can stabilize the grids. This is the first implementation of a fully commercial vehicle-to-grid example, a real fully commercial. We did it, we were the first ones in the world. We did it in Denmark. And because we have invented the first charger that is able to discharge the car. How many hours do you use a car? 1 hour per day? For the rest, 21 hours, you are at the office or you are at home. We can use the battery of yours when you are at the office or you are at home. But as Airbnb is able to rent your car, your house, when you don't need your house, we are able to use your battery when it's parked. The car is parked and we stabilize the grid. We have done trials in UK, in Germany, in France, but we did this. That was the first fully commercial example.
Energy is part of our everyday life. And we can't live without it. Do you know how you can help find
this is a real example that we can use, because if we think about the future and we think that the future will be with billions of electric cars, why don't we use those electric cars to stabilize the grids? And from my point of view, I have a small column on Time magazine. I written, paraphrasing Einstein, future is e-mobility to grid. We can use tractors to stabilize the grids. Electric tractors could be used 3 months a year. When they are parked, they are battery with wheels. For us, a car is a battery on wheels. For us, a tractor is a battery on wheels. For us, even a boat can be a battery on wheels. How many months a boat is parked? Try to imagine a boat with a battery inside. Why don't we use this battery when it's parked? There are gigawatts already today of batteries already installed. Who could cannibalize the companies that in the utility sector that are managing the balancing services, the ancillary services in Northern Europe? Vodafone. Vodafone has more or less 700,000 batteries already installed in their network. They don't use those batteries. They use more or less 20 minutes a year, those batteries. So those batteries are in the network. They could use them for the 20% of their amount to stabilize the grid. This is what we are doing with them in Ireland today. We are already doing it. It's an opportunity. There are a lot of batteries in BTS, in photovoltaic residential, in stores. A lot of batteries in hospitals. A lot of batteries will come. More data centers will come, more batteries, more opportunities. This is a provocation, but I think that the future will provide us with more opportunities than we can think about it. And why I love this job? Because I don't know what I'm doing. This is great, because people come to me and they say, hey, what you are doing, what you will do next year? I don't know. I must try and try. We have innovation hubs looking for startups in Rio, Brazil, in Santiago del Chile, in Moscow, in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, in Tel Aviv, in Spain, Madrid, in Italy. But we find solutions from Africa, because we scout Africa. We found solutions in Norway, in England, because we scout England, Germany, France, and every day we must look for something that we don't know. We must be humble, knowing, as Einstein said, when they make an interview to him, what you will do after this very important award that you have got. And he said, I don't know. Because if I knew before, you couldn't call it research. Research is looking for something that you don't know. That's why I think that we can't create scenarios, that we can't use the strategy. The strategy has been disrupted in the last 20 years by innovation. Innovation has killed strategy. I have worked for Nokia at global level, and I was consultant of the global CEO. They have invented smartphone, but according to their scenarios, the smartphone was useless. That's why they said to me, I don't want to make this alliance with this small company, starving, very close to go to bankrupt, that I proposed to them. That company was Apple. They said, we don't want to make this alliance with Apple because they are useless for us. I proposed to use the smartphone with the iOS. They said, why the smartphone is useless? Nobody will use smartphone. In 2 years, they shift from the dominant rule with the 72 global market share, they switched to the need to sell even the building of their headquarters. And in another 2 years, they have sold the company for 7 billion. 4 years before, the value of the company was 80 billion. So from 80 to 7 in 4 years. From 72 global market share to 7 global market share. 7 point. If you don't innovate, your company will die. That's why we have the innovability concept. Innovation and sustainability. We want to survive, so we want to change our company. In 2 hours, you change the skin of your lips. What happens if you don't do this? Do you know that the dust is skin? The 90% of the dust is skin. Because we change our skin every 20 days, and we change the skin of our lips every 2 hours. So if we don't change, we die. The same happens with companies. We want to survive. We want to change ourselves. We want to change everything every day, and we can do it only counting on the passion, the willingness, the love for this change of our colleagues, and the love for this change of startuppers being all around the world. If you want to work to change your company with us, we are very open to collaborate with everybody. Independent innovators, big companies, small companies. We have launched a lot of partnership with other utilities, and we are asking them to join with us. If we select startups, why don't we try? I select one, you select another one, you select another one. Every time we can test and we can share the results. So I end my speech, sorry because I'm late. We have a website, www.openinnovability.com. We use this website to launch challenges, technical challenges and social challenges, innovation and sustainability. If you have a technical challenge that you want to launch with us, We are very open to host you. Thanks to this website, we collect ideas and projects from 66 different countries. And we have solved many technical challenges, thanks to them, saving many millions of euros every year and saving even the life of our colleagues. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Ernesto. I think at this point, as we've run over considerably and we've had what I consider to be the best line I've heard in a long time, which is innovation's killed strategy, which I think is an interesting way of looking at how we're moving forward. Unless there are any urgent questions from the audience, I would actually encourage you to actually come up and meet the guys while we're networking outside. As you know, the dinner is taking place at the Kemahar Dome at 7 o'clock. If you have a red dot on your name badge, that means you're booked in. If you think you're booked for dinner and don't have a red dot, I'd go and speak to somebody at reception. And if you want to come for dinner, there are still a few places available. So I think at this point, I'm going to round everything up, thank our speakers this afternoon for a fascinating session, and thank you all for coming.